At first, I thought it was a joke, a nervous reflex, an overworked imagination. My body hadn't slept properly for almost a week. That would explain a lot. When you don't sleep, the world starts to hum. Not noise. A low, constant hum, deep and vibrating, like an old transformer box behind your skull. Time dissolves. Words blur into stains. Faces lose their skin, just muscles, eyes, and exhaustion. On the 6th day without real sleep, I stopped in front of the coffee machine in the office lobby. And that's when I saw him, for the first time. He stood slightly behind me. No, not directly. A few meters away, diagonally. He stood as if he didn't want to be seen. He stood the way I did. I didn't pay attention. Not yet. Only after a few seconds did I notice he was copying every single one of my movements. I raised my hand, he raised his. I sighed and saw his chest exhale in perfect sync. I took a step forward, so did he. Not just a step, but at the exact same moment, with the exact same weight. This wasn't a mirror, not glass, not a reflection. He was real, and he was copying me. I glanced at the others. Nobody reacted. The secretary passed by without even glancing at him. A client on the sofa scrolled through his phone. Nobody saw the man standing right next to me. And when I turned back, he was gone. That night, I didn't sleep again. My eye twitched like a faulty wire. Muscles beneath it pulsed and jumped. I lay in bed, unblinking. Time moved, but it didn't pass. And then, the shadow. At the corner of my vision. I sat up sharply, and there he was again. The same man. My height, my posture, my hair, my walk, my shirt. I put on my jacket, he did the same. I opened the window, he touched the air where his should have been. I tried to scream, but all that came out was a rasp. By the 9th day without sleep, I stepped going outside. I kept the curtains shut and the phone off. He didn't speak. He didn't come closer. He was just there. Always. Sometimes I saw him in the reflection of a dead black monitor. Sometimes in the doorway when I opened a door. Standing in the hallway perfectly in sync. But then, the terrifying part. Sometimes he moved before I did. I'd only think about raising my hand, and his was already in the air. I'd only begin to turn my head, and he was already looking that way. Like he knew me before I knew myself. I stopped eating, stopped thinking clearly. I started recording every movement on my phone, but the playback was always static. Cameras showed black screens. Photos turned into blurred smears as if the lens refused to focus on him. On the 11th day, I decided to try something desperate, something unpredictable, something even I wouldn't expect. I dropped to my knees, suddenly. He did the same. I slapped my face. So did he. I screamed. He screamed, perfectly in sync. I smashed the mirror. He reached into the empty space and clenched his fist as if holding an invisible shard.
I ran into the bathroom and locked the door. I don't know if I cried or laughed. The line was gone. When I finally opened the door, he stood exactly where I had been standing, and he was staring at me with my eyes. This time, he didn't move. I raised my hand. He didn't. I stepped forward. He stayed perfectly still. I whispered to myself. He just stared. For the first time, he wasn't copying. For the first time, he was separate. And that was far worse. He was waiting. I paced the apartment, but he stood in the corner, silent, motionless. When I stopped, he shifted slightly. When I spoke, he tilted his head. Not a reflection anymore. An observer. A researcher. Someone waiting for the cycle to end. The 13th day came. I couldn't tell how much time had actually passed anymore. The world outside faded. People disappeared. No calls, no messages. Maybe I'd stopped existing entirely. I turned on every light in the apartment and sat on the floor. He sat across from me, and for the first time, I looked straight into his eyes. Not mine. His. No emotion. No exhaustion. Eyes of something that already knew I wasn't human anymore. And then I understood. I thought he was my reflection, a copy, a hallucination of a shadow born of insomnia. But no, he was real. I was the copy. I was the echo, a delayed playback of his movements, a fragment my broken mind created to simulate consciousness. He was original. I was lag. His hand first, mine late. I wasn't me. I was an imitation, an afterimage of a body that had already gone. I sit. He stands. I breathe. He doesn't. I fear. He's long past fear. And now I'm writing these words, but he already knows the ending, because he wrote them first. He moves around the apartment, touching objects I forgot I owned. Books, photographs, a kitchen knife.
Each step he takes, I feel myself becoming less real. My movements grow delayed, hollow. I'm no longer sure I move at all, or if I'm just watching someone else wearing my body, living in my space. I try to focus, to find just one thought that's truly mine, but everything sounds like an echo of something thought before me. I step to the mirror. I don't see myself. I stand before it, and I don't exist. But I feel him, behind me, closer than ever. And I no longer think he's someone else. Maybe the real me was always the silent one, the watcher, the one who waited. And the me who feared, who asked, who didn't sleep, was only the shell. Maybe I've already spoken myself out of existence. I don't know how long I've been still. Not because I can't move, but because I see no point. When your body no longer belongs to you, when action itself is just an illusion, why try? He moves freely now. He doesn't mirror me anymore. I mirrored him. I just didn't know. He does things I've long forgotten. Closing windows, rearranging books, turning off lights. And every time I think he's about to do this, he's already done it. My whole life reduced to anticipation of someone else's past. I no longer think in words. My head is full of shapes, textures, half-smells. Memories bleed out of order. The present pulses, wide and dilated like an overexposed pupil. And something new is forming inside me. Not fear, that's long gone. What's left is emptiness, but it thinks. Yesterday, if yesterday even exists, he walked toward a wall that hadn't been there before. It appeared like in a dream, old, cracked, peeling, like it belonged to another apartment, another life. There was a door, low, narrow, blue, dark blue. He stared at it for a long time, then put his hand on the handle and stopped. He didn't open it, didn't enter, just stood there. And I understood that door wasn't meant for him. It was meant for me. I walked closer. My legs carried me like they belonged to someone else, but I reached it. He looked at me, directly, for the first time, not from the corner of his eye, straight at me. His eyes were mine, but deeper, like I was just the surface, and he was what lived underneath it all these years. He nodded once, and disappeared. Not his body, he, gone like a thought completing itself. And I was alone. The door remained. I touched the handle. Cold, metal, real, as if it had always been there. I opened it, and I saw myself, the real me, sitting in a chair, eyes closed, slow breath, faint pulse. I had been here all along, sleeping or dreaming. This was me before the fracture, before my mind turned itself inside out, before I started watching myself from the outside. But it was too late. The body wasn't mine anymore. The eyes were closed and would stay that way. I could stand there forever, touch it, scream at it. Nothing would change. Because I was no longer the one who lived in that body. I was what remained after it fell asleep. I closed the door, sat on the floor, and then, for the first time in a very long time, I saw someone else. Not him. Someone new. A figure, thin, blurred, nothing like me. Standing in the corner, repeating every move I make. When I tilt my head, so does it. When I touch my chest, its shadow follows mine. I smile. The cycle has started again. Only now, I'm on the other side.